Support for WUWM podcasts comes from Potawatomi Casino Hotel Milwaukee, home to 24/7 excitement, dining, and an on-site hotel at 1721 West Canal Street. More information at potawatomi.com.
You're listening to Lake Effect Spotlight from WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR station. Here's one of our favorite conversations about the people, places, and organizations that shape Milwaukee.
Companies around the nation are waiting on the U.S. Supreme Court to rule on the legality of President Donald Trump's tariff war. The president has been using tariffs as both a threat and punishment against nations that he believes have slighted him and the U.S. The implementation of these tariffs has been haphazard, leaving many businesses unsure about how to handle them. That's been especially true for small businesses importing food, like coffee, chocolate, or wine, many of which can't be made in the U.S. Journalist Drew Dawson chatted with some local businesses for this month's Milwaukee Magazine to see how these tariffs are impacting them. He joins me now. Drew, thank you so much for being here on Lake Effect.
Yeah, Joy, thank you so much for having me.
So tariffs have, of course, had a huge impact on industries throughout the U.S. and in our area, but your article really focused on food and beverage. That's grocery stores, coffee shops, really any business selling food. Why did you decide to focus on this specific industry?
I think it's an area that is so important right now to just the average person. You know, everybody who's been to the grocery store in the last year knows prices are slowly going up. And a big part of that is the tariffs. There's a lot of uncertainty there for businesses, and they have to raise their prices as a result. So the reason I wanted to focus on these businesses is because, it's kind of for areas, of consumer products that we all might enjoy from time to time. So why not see how they're doing with tariffs going on?
So one of the biggest issues, it seems, with tariffs is just the confusion over how they're being implemented, if they're being implemented, and the seemingly capricious way that they're being imposed. When you've talked to these local business owners, how are they dealing with that level of confusion?
A lot of them are struggling, and that's because of that uncertainty. They don't know. They came in as quickly as, relief came in the fall. The Trump administration announced in the fall that there would be some relief, especially on food products, which is great for these businesses. But at the same time, they're just as worried about it coming back as quickly as it came in. So when they're budgeting for last year or even trying to budget for this year where there's so much uncertainty, they don't know what their costs are going to be, and it's hard to project where they'll be at the end of the year.
Yeah. There's often this line of, if you don't want to pay tariffs, just buy local, buy American. But that isn't possible for many of these businesses specifically. One of the best examples might be just coffee shops in general. You specifically spoke with Stone Creek here in Milwaukee. When you break it down, where are most of their products really coming from?
Well, it's not from the U.S. Unfortunately, you cannot buy coffee beans from the U.S. because you can't grow them here. There's a specific ring around the world that is very tropical and, unfortunately, not any U.S. land. So they have to import all of it. They have to import every single bean, and they do 600,000 beans a year, which is no small number. But that cost means just alone on tariffs last year, they had to pay an additional $270,000, which eats at their bottom line. And even further than that, on all of their products and just total tariff-related increases in cost for them was around $1 million. And I don't know about you, but I do not have $1 million just lying around, and I don't think many businesses do.
Yeah, especially these small businesses that, are really local institutions. I think Stone Creek would be among them. How is that impacting their business? Are they raising their prices? Are they, trying to wait it out right now?
No, I think a lot of places are struggling with that. They're trying to hold off as much as possible. An example would be Stone Creek, where they have had to raise the price of a cup of coffee, which no one wants, and most customers understand that is the reality. As all costs go up, they're going to see increased prices. But at some point, as they mentioned, that there is only so much that someone is willing to pay for a product. Same with, I talked to the chocolate sommelier on Brady Street, and they too have had to raise prices. And yes, their prices are around $10 to $12 for chocolate. A 10% raise is only $1.50, but that adds up. And again, it's the same situation of people will only pay so much for a product, and when do you reach that point?
Yeah. Chocolate's another product that, of course, can't really be made here. It's made in other areas of the world generally. What are they seeing, especially because I think when we talk about chocolate, there is the kind of higher tier chocolate, but then there's a lot in between, and I think it's not expected to have a huge price point.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And when you go to the grocery store, you find your normal name brand chocolate, which is a little more sugar, less of the pure cocoa. But again, that's the same thing, like you said. Cocoa is very much like the coffee bean, where it only grows in a certain part of the world. So they have to import it. Luckily for Chocolate Sommelier, they don't import beans. They're not a bean to bar producer. But they're still importing a lot of that chocolate from Austria, from Europe, from all over the world. And yes, those prices go up. And if you're, say, around Christmas time, when I was talking to the Chocolate Sommelier, they were wondering, am I going to get as much business this year? Are people able to splurge, buy that nice chocolate for a nice occasion, say around the holidays, that they might have previously but might not be able to afford this year? So, it's tough for them, and they raise their prices.
Now, one of the businesses you spoke with is an interesting example, Pan Asia Supermarket. It opened fairly recently in West Dallas, but the timing was interesting given the tariff confusion. This is a market that serves a wide variety of Asian communities, as the name might suggest. It has a lot of specialty products, many of which, if they weren't imported, just wouldn't be available locally. How have the tariffs affected the way they're able to run their business?
And the first question I have for them was, what was it like opening a business that does focus on that amidst all of this? And the answer was, it's been very tough. The tariffs have limited stock availability for them, so they're keeping their shelves stocked on a lot of those imported products. It has brought a lot of challenges. It's also forced them to get what they call creative in finding solutions. So, a lot of the produce that they were, pulling from around the world, they've actually started to work with more local producers, which is both good for Wisconsin and good overall for the economy. But as you can imagine, it's completely changing your supply chain. So it is forcing them to do a lot of things different and have a lot of limited stock availability, which, their customers come to expect.
One of the things your article looked at was they had initially planned to have a lot of products that were coming from China, but the tariffs that have been placed on China have been maybe the most confusing, seemingly fluctuating from impossibly high to then, a lot of things that are omitted from the tariff impact. What is that like for a grocery store like Pan Asia?
Yeah, that fluctuation is very tough, and especially, it's at the supply and distributor level as well. They are just as confused. They don't know what products they can ship and how much it's going to cost and how much cost that they're going to pass on. Most of the businesses, including Pan Asia that I spoke with, they mentioned that distributors have slowly tried not to raise their own prices for the imports, but eventually everyone reaches a threshold, and now they have to raise the prices. So, no, it's a huge challenge for them, and it also means, there's confusion when trying to bring these products in. So you don't know how much to ship or how much you can ship. So, say and bringing in Chocolate Sommelier again, they were able to order products, say, 2 weeks, notice. Now, there's no certainty that the products they order will be in months.
Mm. Another product that I think people will be very familiar with being an import, the final business that you spoke with is a wine shop. I don't think I've ever been to a wine shop where there wasn't an extensive number of bottles from around the world. This is a product that we expect to be imported, that we enjoy being imported. How are they doing with these tariffs?
Yeah, I am not a wine drinker myself, so learned actually a lot during this process. But they just like any are struggling. The 60% of their inventory is imported, which is quite a bit of their wine cellars. So they have also had to get creative in how they buy their wine. That includes both, where they ship from. People are spending less is what they have also mentioned, that, people who used to buy the $30 to $40 bottle of wine are now actually going for the $20 or $30 because they're tightening their wallets as well. But as they've done that, 2A wine merchants in the Third Ward has decided, let's look at both, not cheaper grapes, but less valued grapes, but just still deliver great wines, and I'm told. But also, they've expedited the process of looking at more U.S.-based wines. It was a conversation they were slowly having over time. The U.S. wine market, from what they tell me, has become a lot better grapes, a lot better offerings, but it wasn't something they were planning to do for a few years, whereas now they're very much pushing it with the increased cost of tariffs.
And that seems to be the running theme, especially for a local wine seller like Two-Way Wine Merchants. These are often conversations that play out over months, over years, that people are having to have immediately, kind of based on the whims of the president, it seems.
Yeah. How do you plan for something that, can change in a minute? You really can't. And so, the businesses just have to react on the fly. And a lot of these are very small businesses, They have very limited supply chains. And so if those get tightened up, you don't have much options, So for Stone Creek, that's still trying to expand. As we know, we have 4 shops locally and very beloved in the Milwaukee area. They're trying to grow, 600,000 beans last year, 650,000 this year is what they're hoping to do. How do you plan what your bottom line is going to be when you don't know how much it's all going to cost?
Yeah. Well, Drew, thank you so much for joining us here on Lake Effect.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Joy. Appreciate it.
Drew Dawson is a journalist who wrote about the local impact of tariffs in this month's Milwaukee Magazine. At WUWM.com, you can find more of our conversations with MilMag writers.
Lake Effect is a daily talk show on WUWM, Milwaukee's local NPR station. It's a show where we share the stories about the people, places, and organizations that shape the city. If you enjoyed this episode of Lake Effect Spotlight, subscribe to the podcast. You can find all of Lake Effect's conversations at WUWM.com/Lake Effect, and we're on the radio Monday through Friday at noon on 89.7.